host. I have a show at TonyKatz.com. I also have a show out in St. Louis on FM News Talk 97.1. I'm not in Florida yet, and that's Slade O'Brien's fault. But if you work on him, I can be here to grace your ears any chance you want. I also have the pleasure of appearing on Fox and CNBC from time to time, not as much as Scott Rasmussen, but I'm working on that. If he would work a little bit harder, I would be there more as well. It turns out that President Obama is right. It's not my fault. It is indeed everybody else's fault that I don't spend more time on television. But it's good to be with you and engaging this conversation. So many people think this is about specifically an election, but we know as people who are on the ground, as people who are here, or people who have taken the time out of their day, it's more than just the concept of an election. It's more about the idea of value of a society. That's what we're up against. That's the fight. That's the conversation. What are we? Who are we? How do we progress? How do we move down the road? It's one of the conversations that AFP handles so well when they discuss the idea of economic freedom. Because within economic freedom is absolutely the idea and the concept of the value of society. Who are we? What is it that we do? How is it that we get there? Are we the government-centered society, or are we the society of individual responsibility? Do we want people following their passions, following their ideals, following their own morals and vision in order to reach their level of happiness? Or do we want that dictate coming from on high, coming from a group of bureaucrats, coming from some kind of panel that makes decisions, for example, if a company is too big and needs to be broken up? That's part of Dodd-Frank. That is a valueless proposition, and certainly not what we view as an ideal society. If government can decide something is too big, imagine the lengths to which they can decide this, the depths to which they can sink to this, the invasiveness of that concept. Economic freedom is freedom in all ways, and I'm thrilled that we're here to engage this conversation with everybody. Now, you're going to be hearing a lot from me as your MC, coming up, coming down. I haven't seen a heckler yet, but my eyes are on you, my friend. No, don't look behind you. You know what I was talking about. Everybody in the room knew. 3 people when I walked in said, check out the woman with the white pants. That's the heckler right there. I don't know if we're going to get one. I only hope, because, I mean, Rusty Humphries is here. If you haven't heard Rusty Humphries, I think he's on 19,000 radio stations across the country. If you've never seen Rusty deal with a heckler, you haven't lived. Scottie Hughes is here, who you'll be speaking with later, who you'll be hearing from later, and of course, Scott Rasmussen. I mean, Scott Rasmussen is a guy, I have seen him deck a heckler before. True story. And he did it with his left hand, and he's a righty. Cold. I don't know if that story's true, but it's going to be out on Twitter any moment now, and I can't wait to hear the response. Rasmussen reports, responds to vicious lie. No, he really hit the guy. It was fantastic. But allow me to introduce to you right now the director of AFP here in Florida. Has been doing a lot of great work all around the state. To talk to you more about AFP, how you can get involved, and our purpose now through the rest of time. Ladies and gentlemen, Slade O'Brien.
Thank you for coming out this morning. I've got the unenviable task of speaking to you between some absolutely fabulous speakers, so I'm going to be fairly brief in my comments. But one thing I want to do, for those of you who are not familiar with AFP, what we are, what we do. We're a national grassroots organization. We were founded in 2004. We started off with 3 chapters in Kansas, Wisconsin, and Texas. Since then, we have grown to a national organization with over 2 million activists around the country, over 100,000 activists in the state of Florida. What we do is we recruit, train, and mobilize citizens just like yourself to take part in the public policy process. We're a nonpartisan organization. We don't say vote for, vote against. We don't get involved in social issues. We don't get involved in foreign policy issues. We basically stand for 3 principles. Limited government as defined by the Constitution of the United States, fiscal restraint, and we believe that the free market system provides the greatest path to prosperity for the most amount of people. Everywhere it's been tried, it's worked. Everywhere it's been chipped away at, freedom, liberty, and prosperity has gone away. This 2012, I believe, and I would imagine, show of hands, how many people think this is the most important election in the world? Everybody in the room. Absolutely, we are at a crossroads as a country, as a nation. And you're going to hear more from the other speakers today about the policies of this administration and what they've done to this country in a negative way. But I want to talk to you about activities that you can be engaged in the next 25 days to kind of help make a difference. And we've got a tremendous amount of tools and resources available to folks right here in Humphries County, Broward County, and really all over the state. To give you an example, last weekend in Orlando, Florida, we had, I think you guys have all got these on the table. This is probably the biggest door hanger you've ever seen. 50,000 of these were distributed in Orlando and Tampa last weekend by 300 AFT activists. We targeted 12,000 swing voter doors and had conversations with those doors. So what we do that's different than some of the other groups that are out there is, again, we don't actually go out and say vote for this person or vote against this person. We talk about the issues that are shaping what's taking place and try to drive those home. And by going out and talking to independent and swing voters who are still on the fence, those are incredibly important conversations. So we also have phone banks set up around the state. Everybody's chair has this flyer on it. We have 2 offices in Palm Beach County, 2 offices in Broward County. I would implore you to try to get involved and try to get your friends involved as well. We have a sophisticated phone system that actually uses smartphones. You don't have to dial a number. It's all auto dialed for you. And we conduct surveys. And these surveys are short surveys. But what we're doing is we're talking once again to either lazy voters, or we're talking to people that are on the fence with where their thought process is. And we're trying to identify a key issue that may get them more motivated to take part in the process. And once we do that, we then follow up time and time again if we identify them the right way. So I think you all know how close elections in Florida tend to be. So if you can just touch a handful of people, you can make a huge difference going forward. When you talk, and Scott Rasmussen is going to be up here, he can probably shed light on this as well. But when you do focus groups and exit polling of independent and swing voters after an election, and you ask them what was the greatest influence to help you make your decision, it's not radio, it's not television, it's not a fancy direct mail piece. It was a personal contact with either somebody they know or somebody that they think is sort of on a par with them, a hero. Somebody that they think is in the same boat as them, that has the same problems that they have, or is experiencing the same things. So, in this critical election time, what I would again implore you to do is to please get involved over the next 25 days in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's phone banking, canvassing, go into an office and find out how you can help out, whether it's with us or somebody else. You don't want to wake up, some of you probably seen my 2 young kids running around here today. They're handful. I don't want them to come to me 4 years, 8 years, 12 years down the road when they understand things a little bit better, and say, "Daddy, what did you do to prevent this from happening to you?" I don't want any of you to wake up on November 7th and look in the mirror and there be the result that you didn't want, and to say, "Man, I really wish I could have done a little bit more. I should have skipped that one golf game. I should have skipped the movie. I didn't really need to watch, the rerun of whatever show. I could have been doing something to save the country." That's really where we are. And again, Scott may talk about it a little bit. Things the trend has certainly changed here in the last 7 to 10 days. If you listen to the mainstream media, and I think everybody knows sort of why that is when you look at the debate performances. But those things can change back real quick. We still got 25 days, and so again, I would implore you to please get involved. We try to make it easy for you. We've got these door hangers here. We're going to have them in the offices. We've got a backpack so you can put it on your back. Go walk your own neighborhood. If you want to canvass with our tools, we can give you some water to keep it cool right there. If you want to canvass with our tools and our tablets, we've got surveys at the door. The other 2 things I want to talk about real quick before I get off the stage is each of you has one of these sitting on your chair too. It's just a business card on the You Be the Judge project. How many of you in this room can name the 3 Supreme Court judges in Florida that are up for merit petition this year? Can anybody name one of them? All right, one of them. Very good. You get the prize. You know, the challenge that we have in Florida is this. The type of system we have, and I'm not complaining about the system, but the type of system we have is judges are appointed by a judicial nominating committee. They're given, that list is then given to the governor, and the governor has to select from that list. And then those folks are appointed essentially until retirement, but they do face a merit retention race every 6 years. No judge in Florida has ever lost a merit retention race. If you poll the citizens of Florida and actually give them the names of the judges, less than 2% can recognize who that person is and what role in our government they play. So our mission, and again, we're not advocating for the election of any of these judges. Our mission is to call attention to where we think they have overstepped their boundaries, have legislated from the bench, or let their politics influence their decision. And if they're going to have a merit retention race, shouldn't that be the thing we're focused on? Is whether they've done their job, whether they've managed the checks and balances within our system properly. Here's a website that you can find out more information. And if you're one of those people that would like to share that information, we'll get you as many of these little business cards as you'd like to distribute. Because an informed electorate will make the right decision, I think, going forward. The second thing I want to talk about real quickly, and I talked about the fact that we're a nonpartisan organization. How many people in this room are Democrats? Any independents? All right, welcome. Any libertarians? Okay. Republicans? All right. Well, you may like this and you may not. I spend more time as the state director of AFP in Florida with my finger in the chest of Republicans than anybody else. Because those elected officials should know it. They ought to be able to do a better job. If you're going to run on limited government, free markets, and personal responsibility, then I expect when you're in office, you'll uphold them. Right? So, unlike the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, who once they get a candidate elected, their sole goal is to get that person re-elected regardless of performance, we're going to hold the people who get elected accountable and keep their feet to the fire. We developed a program this year for Florida called 5 for Florida. It's 5 basic policy reforms. 5 basic policy reforms that will fundamentally change Florida for the better. The website is www.5forflorida.com. We've had 80 elected officials, or candidates, that are running for office endorse that program. If we're successful, we'll walk into the 2013 legislative session and be able to do some real cool things in Florida as far as accountability, transparency, helping our economy grow, expanding school choice, and putting an end to putting people in pension programs that are no longer working for us in the state of Florida. Our plan is really simple. If you made a deal with somebody, you keep that deal as far as the pensions are concerned, but you don't keep putting a log on fire that's burning out of control. We basically say all new public employees should go into a defined contribution program like the 401k. Let's stop being insane. With that, I know you're here to hear some other people today, so let me get off the stage and thank you very much for your time.
Slate's going to be around along with all the other people here from AFP. There are people from the national office here, people from here in Florida. Of course, Katz, your field coordinator, is here. Make sure you get in touch with them. Get involved. It's never too late. It's never too early. The time is always right to be engaged, without question. Let me bring up, in this county specifically, this woman should be famous because it was quite literally her reporting. Andrew Breitbart told us that if you want to engage the media properly, if you want to tell the true story, take your cell phone, which has a video camera in it, hold it up, and hit record. Those were his words, and those words are extremely true and very prophetic. And Scottie Hughes is somebody who took those words to heart, whether she knew it or not, and quite literally changed politics here in this area of Florida. She'll tell you that story and a whole bunch more. Let me introduce to you the host of Tea Party Network News, Scottie Hughes.
Good morning. I am so excited. What a great intro that Tony Katz gave me. I am so honored to be here speaking as a part of an organization that truly puts actions behind its words, like Americans for Prosperity. I'm very honored to be standing on the same stage as new media superstar and talk radio host Tony Katz, nationally syndicated talk show host Rusty Humphries, and truly the most honest, reliable pollster in this country, Scott Rasmussen, who you're going to hear from. But I am up to a couple weeks ago, I was kind of the new person on the scene. Not many people knew who I was, so I thought I would just simply start off by introducing myself. Hi, I'm Scottie Hughes, and I am a God-fearing, baby-loving, gun-toting, Chick-fil-A eating, Tea Party brewing, non-rude debate interrupting, SUV driving, and talk radio preaching mom. And I have to tell you, in my job, I am pretty blessed that I get to go see some pretty cool things. But one part of it is I get to actually get sent out to some pretty dangerous places. I've been to the war zone in Iraq. I've been to Kuwait. I've been to Guantanamo Bay. I've been to the Democratic National Convention. And that is actually where the most shocking thing in my 20 years of journalism happened. Now, we don't have the video, and I'm going to try and see if I can do this, but just in case, and Tony kind of referenced it. A few weeks ago in Charlotte, North Carolina, I met a man. He looked like a pretty nice man. He had a pin on that said Palm Beach County. I'm like, you know what? Those people are friendly. They're nice. They're out in the sun. They got lots of vitamin D. They're going to be pretty nice people, a nice person to talk to. So let me see if I can play this, just in case some of you never heard the story, because this kind of shows where we are in America today.
Truly tries to protect the Jewish faith.
No, the Christians just want us to be there so we can all be slaughtered and converted and bring on the second coming of Jesus Christ.
Now where do you get
Let me finish. They're not our friends. They want Israel to pursue policies which are antithetical with its security and existence. The worst possible allies for the Jewish state are the fundamentalist Christians who want Jews to die and convert so they can bring on the second coming of their Lord.
Are you kidding? Now, I respect all faiths. I respect Christians. I respect Jews. I respect anyone. However, there is no place in this country for that kind of hate and anyone that wants to promote any type of violence, especially here in the United States of America. And it's because of that I know that my country is broken. I know that my country is broken because instead of putting dollars away into my children's college funds, I'm having to use them every day to fill up the gas tank of the car I take to and from work. The same tank that 4 years ago cost half of what it does today. Now, I guess here in the South, we should consider ourselves pretty lucky, because out west, in Pelosi's progressive paradise, they're dealing with $6 a gallon gasoline. They do wear Birkenstocks, and they're the healthiest state, so they can walk. I don't feel too much. I know my country is broken because instead of mothers and fathers feeling secure that they're sending their children off to war, come January 1st, their defense budgets are going to be cut $500 billion. And how are those mom and dads going to feel sending their sons and daughters off to protect this country, knowing they might not have the tools they need? I know that this country is broken because last week I received a notice in the mail from my healthcare provider saying that my insurance bill was going up $50, not because my family was sick, but because of future increasing cost of health care. And I don't care what they charge me, I'm still going to have to pay linebacker and run through an ER and the masses of no hablo ingleses just to get health care for my ailing and screaming child at this point. I know my country is broken. That because the Pledge of Allegiance is under attack because some state senator in New York feels like because it has the words, one nation, under God, it should be considered a prayer. Therefore, just like the big gulp, I'm afraid one day we might see it banned. They say that there is a war on families, there is a war on women, and guess what? There's right. There's a war on me, there's a war on you, there's a war on our religious freedoms, and you know what? We have not yet begun to fight. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Now, the website, Scottie, is
TPNN.com.
TPNN.com. TPNN. It's hard to say. It's weirder to spell. But it's a good site, and Scottie's there, and that's all you really need. Why don't we just have Scottie.net?
Huh?
Scottie.net. Why don't we just do...
TeaPartyNewsNetwork.com is where all the Tea Partiers.
Okay. I would like to see Scottie.net, and I'm putting my vote in for that. Listen, I'm entitled to my vote. If it's Chicago, I'm entitled to my vote 4, 5, 6 times. And it's very interesting to hear her talk because she brought up a couple of subjects that all engage the concept of economic freedom. We will find more and more as we engage these conversations, it all comes back to economic freedom. Joining us right now, he is a nationally syndicated talk radio host, a fellow cigar aficionado, and please ask him about his jerky. Oh, would you please, ladies and gentlemen, Rusty Humphries.
What the website again, it was for Scottie, it's TPNN, like TeaPartyNewsNetwork.com, so you should check that out. Can you hear me in the back? Can you guys hear me in the back? I want to make sure you can. But now, before I get started, I have some rules that are very, very important. Yelling, screaming, heckling, cheering, and animal noises are all heavily encouraged. Please, don't be afraid to get a little rowdy this morning. Let's hear a little noise. Let's get it. There you go. Thank you. I'm going to wake you guys up. I'm going to have to get my check back. Okay. By the way, I have to insert a warning label here at the beginning of my speech. I am not the most politically correct guy in the room. I will tell bad and politically insensitive jokes. I will probably offend somebody, but I will tell you the truth. So we've got that going on. But I'm very concerned about our country. I'm very concerned. I'm so concerned about our country that if you look at me, you can tell I've put on a couple of pounds. This is not fat. These are storable goods. And so in case of disaster, I am prepared for many, many months. I see some of you also have some storable goods. That's good. All I can say is, please, let's get some real change in America so we can all lose a little weight. So, thank you. Demosthenes was one of the greatest speakers of all time. He was from ancient Greece. And he understood, when he was a young man, the importance of speaking, the importance of being a great orator. Problem was he wasn't at first. He was a guy that stuttered, couldn't talk. So as he started growing up, he would put a pebble in his mouth. He would try to learn how to get the elocution just perfect. He got that fixed. And then he had a very quiet voice. It was hard to hear him. So he would go on the shores of the ocean and speak and give these speeches and practice so it could be heard over the waves. He was also a small man, very weak in body, and he worked out and built himself up, got himself in shape. He worked, he became one of the great speakers of all time. Some people might say, you didn't build that? I would disagree. But Demosthenes was asked, what are the 3 most important things in a speech? He said, first, action. Second was action. And the third was action. Today we're going to talk a little bit about action, and then we're going to do something crazy, and we're going to take some action. Now, the latest political slogan we are seeing out there is forward. Seeing these signs for forward. Now, it is an old trick. My friend Ann Coulter writes about it in her book, Demonic. The left uses speeches like this and slogans like this to help control the speech. Slogans, mantras, marches, it's all a technique to get useful idiots to do your bidding for you. We saw it in the 60s. We saw it in the Occupy Wall Street movement. We saw it recently in the Middle East. But that term forward has been used before. Stalin used forward. Mao used forward. MSNBC uses the slogan, lean forward, right? But I don't know about you, I don't want to follow these people forward off a cliff. I want to take this nation upward. I want to take this nation upward towards success, upward towards prosperity, and upward towards God. Now, we learned at a recent convention that my friend Scottie was at. I can't mention what it was, but it was a convention. One political party, I guess, they don't like to talk about God. They took them, 3 times to add God to their platform? 3, I think it was. Interesting, 3 times God was denied at that convention. When Jesus denied 3 times, anyway, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. And then the cockroach, that's right. Now, I speak to millions of people every night. As a matter of fact, starting Monday, I add a whole bunch of new radio stations. I go from the 8th largest to the 6th largest radio show in America starting Monday. It's a very big deal for me, and I'm very excited. But I do something that the politicians on both sides don't do. I listen. Now, these politicians, they're either talking or waiting to talk. They don't do a lot of listening. And what I'm hearing out there is the mothers and the fathers and the brothers and the sons and the daughters and the business leaders and the truck drivers, they're all saying one thing. And it's very loud and it's very clear. Yet nobody in Washington can hear them because, again, they're not listening. And they don't want to hear what we have to say. Now, these professional politicians are giving their phony praise to the entrepreneurs and they're talking about the American spirit, but they don't understand it. And that political party, they don't think we can be trusted. They don't think we can be trusted to manage our own health care, to educate our children, heck, even choose our own energy resources. So I want to send a message out from the people of America's heartland to the politicians in the heart of America's wasteland. I have a news flash for President Obama and all his party people in the White House flying all over the world on Air Force One. I have a message to Nancy Pelosi, who's trying to get back in that speaker's chair so she can fly all over the world on Broomstick One. I got a message to Harry Reid and the do-nothing Democrats in the Senate. I got a message to John McCain and all the rhinos out there. Rhinos is Republicans in name only. I have a message to Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton's wino. Wife in name only. Oh, he's naughty. It's a message to the czars and a message to the thieves and the looters and the moochers and the bandits and the bums who are robbing us for their own power and glory in D.C. and in state capitals across the country. Now, I'm going to say it so slow that even a liberal is going to be able to understand it. Are you ready? It's not your money, government. Now, here's where I need you to help me get going, okay? I want to say it loud and so proud. I want you to help me out so that they can hear it. It's not your money. It's not your money. One more time. It's not your money. No, you moochers. It's not your money. It is my money, and it's your money. It's our money. It's not their money. And you government peoples, you need to listen up because it's not your money to take over car companies or try to force solar energy or give out Obama phones. It's not your money to encourage voter fraud or Media Matters or any of these other shady political front groups. It's not your money. And so the action I'm asking you to do today, and it is an action that is so easy yet so important. We talked about Demosthenes. He couldn't have dreamed of this. Remember, Demosthenes, the great orator. But now, today, we live in the world of the internet. And it's a world where a man who can't speak very well, with a quiet voice, whose body wasn't strong. Today, that same man can have a huge voice that can be heard all around the world. And you can be that man or woman. You can do it. One of the things I want to encourage you to do is do the 3 F's. No, that's not naughty. 3 F's. Find me, friend me, follow me. Find me on the internet. Friend me on Facebook. Like me on Facebook. And then also follow me on Twitter. And do that with all your friends here. Get to know everybody. Let's start getting this message out. We've got to get the message out because we don't have 4 more years to stop this train wreck from moving us forward. The largest tax hike in history is coming January 1st unless we do something about it. And there is something we can be done. I'm going to ask you, please, energize your friends to vote. Work with my friends here at AFP. We got to make sure that Barack Obama's last party in the White House is on Halloween, because I can't think of anything more frightening than 4 more years of this economic terror. We got to government. The American people tell me this. I'll wrap it up with this. We got to get the government out of our way. We can succeed or fail on our own. We Americans can do it. We Americans can turn this economy around. We want to succeed or even fail on our own, but we cannot do it with the government in our way. So please, work, fight, vote, and remember, tell your politicians it's not your money. Guys, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I hope you can hear me in the back of the room. Thank you. Keep standing. You're good. Everybody stand up. This is a good one. It was a good one. Yes. Thank you. A standing ovation for me? Wow. Thank you.
Another hand for Rusty Humphries. He needs it, ladies and gentlemen. Please don't let him down. Shake his hands. Hand him $5 on the way out, won't you? My goodness, an absolute pleasure. Again, we see how these things tie back and how they tie back to a concept of focus, and a focus that's actually moving the nation along. But if you want proof, I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. You just met me, admittedly, handsome man, but you just met me, and maybe you don't trust. I'm still waiting for our heckler here to go, you know, full bore. She's got the camera, she's ready. My eyes are right there. But if you don't take my word for it, take the word of a man who knows the numbers. Inside and out, backwards and forwards, and can explain what they mean, not what people want them to mean. He is the creator and the pollster over at RasmussenReports.com. He has a weekly series that you can catch called What America Thinks, if you want to know really what's happening. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Rasmussen.
I have the unenviable task of my job is sometimes I need to tell you what's really happening, not what you want to hear. Sometimes it's what you need to hear. And, you know, for example, if you want me to tell you that Mitt Romney is absolutely going to win the presidential election, I cannot tell you that. He might win, he might lose. There are numbers, there are realities to deal with. When I look at the situation we're in, I can talk to you about all the short-term numbers and what we're going to be looking for the next 3 weeks. But I want you to understand it in a larger context. The last time that government spending went down in America from 1 year to the next was 2 years before I was born. And I wish it wasn't true, but that was a long, long time ago. Dwight Eisenhower was president the last time that spending went down. That 58 years where presidents have won election and members of Congress have won election and they've all promised to cut spending, has never happened once. That is the underlying issue of this election. It has everything to do with the role of government, the relationship between government and the American people. I also want to tell you that sometimes what you hear in news stories is exaggerated about what's happening in the campaign. For example, the current storyline is that 2 weeks ago, Barack Obama had the election all wrapped up, and then he had a terrible debate, and now Mitt Romney's doing really well. And there's a kernel of truth in there. On the day before the first presidential debate, Barack Obama was up by 2 points. As of this morning, Mitt Romney is up by 1 point. There hasn't been a massive swing, just a 3 percentage point switch. What that means is only about 1 or 2% of all Americans change their mind after the debate. 98 or 99% of us were still planning to vote for the same person beforehand. You might feel better about your candidate, you might feel more enthusiastic, but it was part of a long-running battle where both candidates have been in a close race all year. In 89 of the last 100 days, President Obama and Mitt Romney have been within 3 points of each other in our presidential tracking poll. So if you're believing that this thing is over, you're just wrong. And I want to give you another little look at how close it really is at this point in time. We call people across the country, we ask them who they're going to vote for.
When we asked over the last 3 nights, on the first pass, 47% said Romney, 47% said Obama. Of all of those people, we asked them, are you sure, or is it possible that something could change your mind? And about 10% of all voters say maybe they can change their mind. Most of them won't. And by the way, Obama supporters right now are a little more open to changing their mind than Romney supporters. Mitt Romney's support a bit more solid, partly because of that debate performance, but partly because people are uncomfortable with where the president has led in the last 4 years. So then you go to the people, when we first called it was 47, you had 6% that were undecided. Now some people, Dick Morris talks about it on Fox, others talk about it in different ways, say, oh, all those undecideds are going to break for Governor Romney. That's not true. When we push all of those people, say, okay, if you had to make up your mind right now, we know you're not sure, but if you had to make up your mind, what happens? Romney gains 2 points, Obama gains 1 point. You have a group of people who are uncommitted to the candidates right now, and their general attitude is they don't like President Obama very much. They don't think the economy will get better if President Obama wins. But they also aren't convinced that Mitt Romney will be any better. That's the discouragement that they're facing. And many of them are saying it really doesn't matter. Of the uncommitted voters out there, the people who will ultimately decide this election, only 1 out of 4 thinks it makes a difference. So if you're out there talking to people and you're talking about the things that are going to change the election, you need to recognize that they are not partisans. They do not see the fate of the union riding on this election. They are looking for a reason to believe that Mitt Romney will be any different. That is the piece they're missing. Now, there's some other changes that have taken place, but again, I want to put it in this larger context. The storyline for much of the year was, even though the national polls were close, Obama was doing better in the swing states. At Rasmussen Reports, we track swing state polling every single night, and that storyline was generally true. Almost every night, Barack Obama was doing better in the swing states. He put a lot of money there early when Mitt Romney was still playing the Republican primaries. He put a lot of campaign forces in play. But in the last week, that has changed. Mitt Romney's numbers in the swing states, overall, 11 key swing states, are exactly the same as they are in the national polls. So that advantage has disappeared. And to give you a sense of really how stable this whole process has been, and the fact that the campaigns are about fundamentals, not about last-minute campaign tactics, I'd like you to think back to January, which seems like forever ago. When we were writing about this campaign then and talking about it, we said it was going to be a close election because the president's job approval was around 47 or 48%. That means he's likely to get around 47 or 48% of the vote. We said there would be 4 states that would determine the winner: Florida, Ohio, Virginia, and North Carolina. Those are the 4 states that were key. 10 months later, the president's job approval is up just 1 point. And we still talk about those states as key. In North Carolina, Mitt Romney has now moved ahead by 3 or 4 points. If I had to guess, that is a state that is most likely to end up in the Romney column. In Virginia, the president was ahead consistently. That was one of the states he really worked hard in. Romney is now up 2 in Virginia. And we just released some brand new numbers. Mitt Romney is leading by 4 here in Florida. Yeah. 4 points is a better lead than he's had for a long time. The trends are moving in his direction here in Florida. Seniors, more than any other group in the electorate, hate the president's health care law. That is encouraging their turnout. But 4 points is still a close race. This is not something that you just coast on. And by the way, the 4th state in that list is Ohio. And Barack Obama is still up by 1 point in Ohio. It is possible for Mitt Romney to be elected president while losing Ohio. It's theoretically possible. You know, there's stories, well, maybe he'll pick up Pennsylvania, or maybe he can pick up Wisconsin, New Hampshire, Nevada, and Colorado. And those things are theoretically true, but he's still trailing badly in Pennsylvania. Wisconsin is a difficult state. President Obama won it by 14 points 4 years ago. He's within, it's a 2-point lead right now. But the bottom line is, if Mitt Romney does not win Ohio, it is very hard to see him winning the other states he would need to make it up. That is where the election will probably end up. Now, when you start to hear when you start talking about these things, I can tell you what our numbers say. And you probably have heard some skepticism about polling in the last couple of weeks or couple of months. I'm sure none of you are ever skeptical about poll results that you see. But let me tell you, there's lots of details that you can get into. When polling geeks like me get together with other polling geeks, we talk about all kinds of internal issues and how different firms measure partisan identification or what the sample should look like. And you really don't want to get into those conversations because they're pretty boring. What you do want to do is learn how to read the information that's out there. What most people do is they find a poll that is good for their candidate, and they rationalize why that's the one that makes sense. So if you're a Republican and you find a poll that shows Mitt Romney up by 7 in Florida, you're going to say that's the best poll out there. And if you find another one that says Barack Obama is up by a point, you're going to say, oh, that's worthless. They're a bunch of Democratic hacks. And Democrats have exactly the opposite reaction. My advice to you is to ignore that tendency. You should look at all the polls. You should look to find common ground among them. When I talk about common ground, it doesn't mean the numbers have to match up perfectly. In recent weeks, regardless of where the polls were before the first debate, every single national poll and just about every single swing state poll has shown a shift, a slight shift in Romney's direction. Since every poll is confirming it, you can believe that's true. Also, every poll is showing the race to be close. The president's support in every national poll is between 45 and 49%. That is a good indicator that that's where the race stands today. You can get into arguments about whether some polls are showing too much support for one candidate or the other, but when you look across all the polls, you get a good handle on what's happening. Same in the swing states. I wouldn't get too worried about arguing about our poll showing Obama up 1 and another poll showing Romney up 1 in Ohio. I would take that to mean the race is very close, and all the efforts to get every voter to the polls are really critical. And when you start thinking of the election in this way, you get back to a more fundamental reality. The American people have been divided about this administration for 3 years. The president's job approval fell to 47% in December of 2009. It has barely budged since then. People love him or people hate him, but you are not going to persuade anybody in the last 3 months of a campaign to switch, or the last 3 weeks of the campaign, to switch their opinion of President Obama. What you might do is convince them the alternative is better. You might be able to tap into some other concerns that would cause them to vote for Mitt Romney, but you are not going to change anybody's basic opinion of this president. And going forward, I think there's another lesson in all of this. When we talk about elections, sometimes people say, oh, this is the most important election of my lifetime, and it's going to set a mandate, the winner's going to have a mandate to implement all these policies, and they're going to change America. Elections don't change America. Elections make it possible for somebody to change the way the government is working. But it's the way you govern that changes the direction of the country. People don't remember Ronald Reagan today because of what he said on a campaign trip in 1979. They remember him today because of what he did as President of the United States. And it was those actions that have made him a revered figure in our history. And what that means is, regardless of who wins, They're going to stand up and say they have a mandate. But what you have to understand is the real work begins on November 7th. Let me give you a scary thought. We have had 3 elections in a row, 2006, 8, and 10, where voters voted against the party in power. They didn't like Republicans one year and Democrats the next. They were unhappy with both parties. We've had 3 presidencies in a row where the president came into office with his party in control of Congress and lost control. That has never happened before in American history. It is a fundamental rejection of both political parties. The scariest thing for the nation right now would be for Mitt Romney to win the White House, Republicans to control the House, Republicans to pull off an upset and win control of the Senate, and then do nothing. If that happens, we are likely to see 3 or 4 serious presidential candidates in 2016. It is not enough to win the election. You have to begin talking about what's going to happen after the fact. And when we look at that, I'd like you to think about what's happened, say, in the media in the last 20 years. If you were a group of newspaper executives sitting here in 1992, and I had told you about this new thing coming up called the internet, and that it was going to destroy everything you knew about the newspaper business, and that most of the big newspapers would be out of business, you would have laughed at me. Newspapers did mock that idea. In fact, I was told personally in the 90s that newspapers are the only source that people trust for local news, and nobody will ever go anywhere else. And they were wrong. The change that is coming to America in the next 10 years in the relationship between the American people and their government will be even bigger than the change that took place to the newspaper industry over the last 20 years. It's going to change because of what I mentioned at the beginning. Government spending has gone up every single year since 1954. People have been voting to change that. They've been voting for people who promised to change that. It was a low-grade frustration, and then we had the bailouts 4 years ago. And they are still the most hated piece of legislation in recent American history. That created the Tea Party movement. It also created the Occupy movement. It created a sense that nobody in Washington is listening. And we have had gaps like this in our history before, and change is always led by voters. Politicians do not bring about change in the country. Politicians only respond and give voice to what public opinion is. And just to be clear on this, Ronald Reagan did not create the tax revolt. Ronald Reagan gave great voice to it. He was elected president because of it, and he acted upon it as president. But public opinion had changed to make it possible for Ronald Reagan to do that. Right now, the American people are saying we need to reduce the role of government in our lives. We need to reduce this in specific, or in particular, the role of the federal government. And let me give you one just sense of perspective on this to show you how deep it is. We go out and ask people all the time, are you concerned, what worries you more, that the federal government will do too much in terms of dealing with the economic problems we face, or too little? And it's pretty much a toss-up. There are as many people worried the government will not do as much as they should as are worried that it will do too much. So we went and asked the people who said they want the government to do more. What would you like the government to do? The number one thing on their list to help the economy was the government needs to cut spending. They were not looking for a more active role. They were simply saying the government today is a burden on economic growth and we need it to stop. That is going to be the challenge for the next president and for the next Congress. And as you know, if you try and take power and money away from anybody, they don't like it. If you start talking about taking power and money away from the people in Washington, D.C., they are not going to like it. And that is true of Republicans in Washington and Democrats in Washington. That means we are going to have a turbulent period as we try to reestablish this relationship between the American people and their government. I'm confident we will get there. I absolutely believe that when all is said and done, that we will emerge emerge as a nation stronger than we came into these recent problems. I believe that the 21st century will be an American century. I still believe we are an exceptional nation, but I believe it is likely to get worse before it gets better. And I want to leave you with one thought to just make this point, that what you do, not just in the campaign, but in the way that you talk to people, in the way that you interact, in the way that you shape public opinion going forward after November 7th matters just as much as what you do between now and Election Day. And the story is one you're all familiar with. On April 19th, 1775, there was a shot heard around the world. The storybooks say that that shot at Lexington created the American Revolution, started the revolution. And pretty much the way we tell the story is, shot was fired, we picked a fight with the British, we won, we became the greatest nation in history. It's a nice story, but it's not true. The revolution began in the 1750s and 60s and early 70s as individual Americans began to rethink their relationship with the mother country, Great Britain. There were a whole series of events that fired up the colonists. There was the Stamp Act and the Intolerable Acts and the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. Any one of them could have started the revolution. We don't know why it waited until the events at Lexington and Concord, but it did. On that day at Lexington, there were 77 Minutemen who stood up there. A mysterious shot got fired, and the British were the professionals. They got off the first volley of the Revolutionary War. And after that shot was fired, 18 of the 77 Minutemen were felled by a bullet. The other 59 didn't think they'd started a glorious revolution. They fled, and they ran into the woods thinking, we just picked a fight with the mightiest military power in history. It took 6 years to win the war. It took 6 more years to get a constitution ratified. It took 40 years before the War of 1812 was ended and the British finally gave up on undoing the events of that. And perhaps as important as anything in that timeline, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. But he did not do it to start the revolution. He wrote it 15 months after the fighting started. He gave voice, did a great job, eloquent statement of what should be happening. But Thomas Jefferson simply gave voice to what was already happening in public opinion. Right now, we're at a point in our history where we've had some events like the bailouts that are a catalyst. We have a lot of frustration that is building up. We do not have the person who has yet given voice to these concerns and who can lead us into the new era. And it will take time. When you're going through it, you're thinking, how can other people not see what's happening so plainly? How come the changes aren't happening right now? It always takes time, and there will always be pushback. The thing that gets me through and continuing to believe that we'll come out of this all right is that even today, 81% of Americans believe that we were all endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. They don't believe those rights came to them from government. We also know that 7 out of 10 Americans believe that governments do derive their only just authority from the consent of the governed. And when you look at all the data together, what you see is a very simple objective. What people are looking for today is the exact same thing they were looking for at the end of the most famous presidential address of all time. They want our nation to have a new birth of freedom, so that government of the people and by the people and for the people shall not perish from this earth. Thank you very much.